of how we would go about doing that. In your book, you quoted Andrew Gamble, and you talked yourself about the politics of recession and how the old regime comes to be replaced by a new regime, not without a fight, not in any kind of simple passage, but over time, especially in deep crises. And I suppose against that backdrop, I'd like to ask you, how would you like to see New Ireland emerge in the future? What would be one of the first steps you'd like to see in this new regime?
Well, I've always resisted the sort of speculative activity of imagining how things might be, which it seems to me is a bit of a waste of time. What Peader Kirby thinks about how things might be matters not a whit to anybody. What I think our task, I'm a social scientist, I think the task of social scientists is to try to analyse what are the options that are there emerging in the present. And that's why all I've been talking about is trying to identify and see signs of hope in what I see as an emerging option. And it is the strengthening of that option, it is the movement from a strong alternative pluralistic civil society, imagining a different sort of society with different values, moving from there to the emergence of alternative political movements that can embody in concrete political projects that vision of an alternative Ireland. That's what I want to see happening. And I begin to see signs of it. I'm also enlightened by the fact, heartened by the fact that the opinion polls are showing the emergence of the Labour Party as now the single biggest party. Not because I think the Labour Party is a perfect party, no. Though I do think that if we look historically at governments, and I think back at the government between 1992 and 1997, which I think did sow the seeds of some very fine achievements, which were then destroyed by the governments that came in afterwards with their tax-cutting agenda. I think governments do matter, and the quality of governance matters, and I think we have some good parties, and we have one appallingly bad party, and that's Fianna Fáil. And the crisis that we have is the crisis of a Fianna Fáil-led Ireland. Fianna Fáil have virtually run this state as a one-party state, which they felt that they owned in some way. And I think we have a state that mirrors all of the profound weaknesses of that party. So the only breakthrough that I can see happening at the political level that is absolutely necessary is that Fianna Fáil is reduced permanently to a rump party. It no longer has a sense of owning the Irish state, and it allows other political movements to emerge, because it has completely blocked that space.
Given that this is for a leadership course, would you feel that it's possible to identify some of the leadership characteristics that Fianna Fáil leaders have shown that have been so negative to Irish society? I mean, I'm sure all of us can think of some, but it'd be interesting to hear what you think in terms of mistakes that they made in leadership, or poor leadership characteristics that had, maybe they weren't mistakes for them, and how these could be remedied in the future.
Yeah, I mean, leadership is about courage, leadership is about vision, leadership is about values, leadership is about a very strong sense of critical discrimination. By that I mean, you know what you're for and you know what you're against. You don't try to satisfy everybody, because you know you can't do that. You're trying to build a project. Now, of course, good leadership tries to bring people on board and encourage people, but it has a goal to which it wants to get, and it has the understanding that to get there, you need to plan concretely steps, and you need to take those steps, and not do, as Fianna Fáil have done, sort of wishful thinking that it'll turn out okay on the day. And I mean, a complete waste of resources, a complete lack of planning, a complete abuse of the state, producing all sorts of documents here, there and everywhere that purported to be policy plans for the future. The latest of them is the Smart Economy, which quite honestly aren't worth the paper they're written on. They're disgracefully weak, without any sense of a strategy for the future. So, I mean, any good leader will dismiss that and say we need something that is really well worked out, that it has a vision which is achievable, and that we have steps that we know how we might achieve that, and we will assess as we go along whether we're getting towards the goal we're setting or whether we aren't. The Fianna Fáil state never did any of that, and Irish society acquiesced in that. Grossly inefficient, grossly wasteful, without any vision of the future, without any courage, without any honesty, without any critical discrimination. Those are the qualities of leadership. And they are there in any society, has those, unfortunately, because of the dominance of the state by Fianna Fáil. Those qualities, it seems to me, have been smothered out. And
Fianna Fáil emerged out of a political culture that we have in this country that's quite unique, and you attribute at least part of that political culture to our voting system of proportional representation by the single transferable vote, which I study here, which is not unique to us. We share it only with Malta and Tasmania. You made the point. Would you like to go into how that contributes to the political culture we have, and maybe suggest a better system?
Yeah, it reinforces a sense of localism and of personalism, which I think have served us very, very badly. In itself, it seems to me to be a very good system in a technical way, because it avoids the downsides of many systems which fail to represent adequately in terms of the percentage of that particular parties will get, the percentage of the electorate that vote for them. In other words, there's often a disjuncture between the percentage that X party gets in a system like the British system, of course, particularly so, and their actual support in the population. So our system, in a technical sense, is a very good system. Unfortunately, in a political culture, in a political system, in a society where we've had this very strong sense of the value of personal relations, and where we've had a very unintellectual and non-ideological political culture, it has tended to exaggerate some of those weaknesses and to work strongly against the emergence of more ideological politics, more intellectual politics where people which really throw up leaders. I mean, because it seems to me that one of the effects of our single transferable vote is that it brings to the fore people who are very good at being very attentive to their local base. But those are the sorts of qualities really that are not needed among people whom you want to see having the courage to project a national vision and take the steps towards that vision. Not that they neglect the needs of their electorate, but that they aren't captured and narrowed by the needs of their electorate, which I think is what our system does. So I think that what we should move towards is a system that combines some of the strengths, representative strengths of the single transferable vote with a list system, which I think allows for parties to put on their lists people that they see as people of real leadership capacity, who don't have to worry about getting a postbox for Johnny Murphy at the corner of this or that street, which unfortunately is what most of our legislators spend most of their time doing.
And to finish up, you touched on the possibility that a new kind of ideological Irish politics will emerge, and that's also something that's in the chapter of the book about how there is an increased possibility that we'll now have a more traditionally European left-right divide in Irish politics, and you looked at the way in which the two different sides of the emerging left side was analysing the crisis that we had and how they were suggesting we deal with it versus the establishment side. I think we've heard a lot of what the establishment side has said, so would you like to elaborate or go into maybe some of the alternative ideas that are being brought up by the left in terms of how we could respond to it?
Yeah, I would, but I think the first thing to say is I do think it's the first time, certainly in my lifetime, and I think it's probably the first time in the history of the state, where you have significant sectors of Irish society, political society, civil society, coming together and seeking to map out a real alternative. Now, the dimension of that alternative at the core is, and the ICTU and the Labour Party and its featureling have from early on in this crisis emphasised the need for a stimulus package so that we can't find a way out through austerity. That's the most fundamental dividing line. That what we need to do is to redesign a taxation system for a modern society, whereas it seems to me that the model that the present government are putting forward it lacks any coherence about what sort of a taxation system they should design. In fact, they've been disgracefully bad at ruling out, even before it got any consideration, a property tax. There's this, as I said, national consensus that we can't raise corporation tax. So, I think the alternative faces the challenges in a coherent and intellectual way about what we need to do.